How often do you watch thriller or horror films? Well, I do not watch horror too often, but when I do, I actually prefer thrillers over pure horror. Do you prefer psychological thrillers or slasher films? Well, I actually prefer psychological thrillers because I personally feel like that they are way more interesting than slashers because they actually mess up with my head. What makes a horror movie scene truly terrifying for you? Well, a truly terrifying scene is one that builds tension slowly, making me feel quite uneasy because, like, anything even happens before, so, like, silence, eerie music, and a disturbing actually reveal always gets me. So, how important is the setting? Example, an isolated basement parking lot to you when watching a horror film? Well, the setting is quite important. I personally feel like it's really important because an isolated basement or an abandoned house or even an empty street at night makes everything scarier. If the atmosphere is right and like even a simple scene can feel terrifying. Do you think a silent lurking killer is scarier than one who actively interacts with the protagonist? Well, a silent lurking killer is way scarier than one who talks. The unpredictability of not knowing when they will attack or what they are thinking makes it so much worse. What traits make a serial killer character truly terrifying or memorable in a thriller slash horror film? Well, a terrifying killer is quite calm, and I think he's quite emotionless and completely unpredictable. If they have like a twisted logic behind their actions but still seem eerily normal, that's what makes them unforgettable. Okay. Do you prefer a killer with a mysterious unknown backstory or one with a clear motive? Why? Well, I actually prefer a killer with a mysterious backstory because it actually makes them feel more inhuman and unstoppable. Not knowing their motive or like how they become this way keeps the fear alive, like long after the movie ends. So, yep, this is.
How often do you watch thriller or horror films? Fairly often. Do you prefer psychological thrillers or slasher films? Slasher films. What makes a horror movie scene truly terrifying for you? When the killer or evil is in the background and just lurking, but the protagonist doesn't know about it? How important is the setting to you when you watch a horror film? I think for me, it's important because I find killers scarier when they attack in like public everyday places because that means realistically they can get you anywhere. Do you think a silent, lurking killer is scarier than one who actively interacts with the protagonist? I think both can make for a really good plot because a silent killer makes it more mysterious, but one that interacts with their victims are usually more interesting. What trait makes a serial killer character truly terrifying or memorable in a thriller horror film? When they have backstories that will make you sympathize with them. Do you prefer a killer with a mysterious, unknown backstory or one with a clear motive? I prefer a clear motive because then while watching a movie, you can connect it back to the serial killer's character profile.
How often do you watch thriller or horror films? Quite often. Do you prefer psychological thrillers or slasher films? Definitely slasher films. What makes a horror movie scene truly terrifying for you? Probably its plot, maybe. I guess never paid that much of attention to it, anyways. How important is the setting and isolated basement parking lot to you when watching a horror film? Probably, if the story is executed very well, it could be a very crucial and important part of the movie. Do you think a silent lurking killer is scarier than one who actively interacts with the protagonist? Both could be very good, either silent or someone who's very actively there or shown very vigorously. What traits make a serial killer character truly terrifying or memorable in a thriller horror film? Probably if he has any past trauma due to which he gets into this psychopath type of killing, or maybe how he's connected to the movie. Definitely overall execution matters of how it's shown. Do you prefer a killer with a mysterious unknown backstory or one with a clear motive? Probably with a mysterious or unknown black backstory, because I guess that's it's just more correlating with the story, I guess.
How often do you watch thriller or horror movies? Occasionally. Do you prefer psychological thrillers or slasher films? Psychological thrillers. What makes a horror movie scene truly terrifying for you? For me, it's the face reveal of the antagonist or the evil. Do you think a silent lurking killer is scarier than one who actively interacts with the protagonist?
the silent one. What traits make a serial killer character truly terrifying or memorable in a thriller or horror film? When he's in the action of killing someone, or or in the horror film, when the evil is in the action. Do you prefer a killer with a mysterious unknown backstory or one with a clear motive? Mysterious and unknown backstory. How important is this setting to you when watching a horror film? This setting, while watching a horror or thriller movies, it's basically you. The first thought is about a haunted house which is abandoned from years, or sometimes a basement, uh, parking lot or basement of any house which is also abandoned.
How often do you watch thriller or horror films? Very often. Do you prefer psychological thrillers or slasher films? Slasher films. What makes a horror movie scene truly terrifying for you when the killer's identity is revealed at the end of the movie? How important is the setting? Very important. Do you think a silent, lurking killer is scarier than one who actively interacts with the protagonist? Yes, it creates suspense. What traits make a serial killer character truly terrifying or memorable in a movie? If the killer is a close or old friend, do you prefer a killer with a mysterious unknown backstory or one with a clear motive, and why? Unknown backstory as it adds flavor to the plotline.